Welcome to Sinister Scripts podcast, where we watch all the horror movies you know and love, some that you've never heard of, and we have some special guests with us here today. Joining us is DJ and Teague from the upcoming horror thriller, we'll call it Sugarcane. So, guys, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank you
Yeah,
for real. Thanks for having us.
sure, absolutely. So, I gotta ask, you guys excited about the movie? It seems like it's been a while coming.
Excited, relieved.
Yeah,
It's been a
Yeah.
long, long journey, but yeah, a whole lot of nerves, but it's definitely stemmed from excitement.
that's awesome. Yeah, I can only imagine. As I've gotten into what we'll call like the horror creator space, doing the podcast and talking with a lot of people, I've come to have a real love and admiration for independent film, especially. I mean, because let's be honest, it doesn't take a whole lot when you're a major studio and you have, millions and millions of dollars at your disposal versus, I mean, independent film, which has its own challenges. So being able to see what they're able to accomplish, I have the utmost respect for what you guys have been able to build.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Means a lot for real.
Sure. So I have a couple questions I wanted to start with. And the first one is I gotta know, are you both horror movie fans, or was this just like too good of an opportunity to come up that you couldn't pass up working on it? And as I understand, DJ, you do directing and co-directing, is that right? I want to make sure I get your roles
Yeah,
right.
yes. I was a co-director for this film. I've done co-directing and directing, and first assistant director as well. First AD is usually where I sit at, but
Okay.
yeah, this one I got to co-direct, and I gotta be honest with you, I am a scaredy cat. I suck with horror movies because I get scared way too easily, which probably helps me in my favor creatively. But 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 yeah, I get scared very easily, and so I'm more of a thriller person. I'm much more into like crime thrillers and stuff like
Sure.
that. That's where uh, my co-director and head of Postmortem, that's we related more on the thriller side of
Hmm.
things, and so horror that was more so his thing,
Okay.
but for me, I was more so sitting on the thriller side.
I got you. Teague, what about you? Are you a horror
Yeah,
fan?
I've always loved horror and thriller. I remember like when I was a kid, I was super into like the found footage things like Paranormal Activity. Um yeah, I've always loved horror and thriller. There's always such a like range too within the genre.
Hmm.
Have like a lot of different like the psychological thrillers and like just the classic like slashers. I don't know. I think it's all fun.
I agree. I think that like horror is such a divisive like genre. I started doing a segment on my TikTok for like using Tubi films, like Tubi Tuesdays, and I started breaking down all the subgenres within horror. And I was like, dude, I could do this forever. Like you said, it's your slashers, and then you can even break it down
Yeah.
by decade, your 80s, your 90s, your 2000s, 2010s. And I'm like, well, I'm getting old because I've got all these decades to like go through, but that's awesome. I'm glad to see that you both do have a love for horror. And actually, one of my favorite, I guess you could say, I will call it a horror movie, but I consider it more thriller, kind of in your lane, DJ. Was like Silence of the Lambs, and that's really when we start talking about Sugarcane, where I started seeing a lot of like, this is what it really made me feel like the first time I watched Silence of the Lambs was a lot of those same
Mm.
thriller, true crime kind of vibes to it. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So, and the next one I wanted to know is if you had to pick, DJ, what's your favorite horror movie?
Um, hmm. So I did have the ability to stomach watching certain horror films. I would say I really enjoyed The Thing.
Yes.
Um, it's really, I mean, for me, I love the just um the psychological can we curse?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, the whole mind fuck and the whole paranoia that our characters were going through the entire film. You just didn't know who was who. You couldn't trust anybody. And
Absolutely.
I thought that was brilliant, a brilliant premise for a horror film. And um Alien, the first Alien movie.
Yep.
I
Okay.
love that
So
movie to
I'm
death.
sensing a
So
theme here. You like kind of the isolation, the kind of the sense of, like you said, the dread, the who done it and who's kind of what's hiding behind the curtain, which I think it's also no coincidence that each of those films was in the 70s, which was
Mhm.
at that time was more about what you don't see versus now, which I think is let's show everything, right?
Right, right. Yeah, and then outside of that, the first Halloween movie, love that one. I like this. I love the second one too, but I think the first one just the whole mystery of Michael being the shape and
Hmm.
just being the shape the entire
Yep.
time. Like,
Yep.
yeah, that whole fear again, fear the unknown about him, and then um, I I I mean, I guess you would classify it as horror. I would say thriller, but like I like some of Alfred Hitchcock's classics. Which why am I blanking on it? Rear Window. I mean,
Hmm.
it's a thriller. I don't know if it's much of a horror, but it's definitely
Sure.
more on a thriller vibe. Um, that one's my favorite out of his. But yeah, that's about
Okay.
it for me.
Awesome. Awesome. What about you, T? Do you have one that stands out or one that helped shape you?
Yeah, well, I think the first horror movie that I remember watching that like really stuck with me was Oculus.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like there's some mixed reviews on it, but I have a soft spot for that movie. I love Oculus. I think it was like the psychological torment that goes on in it.
Hmm.
But you never really know like what's real and what's not real and what's going on. I love movies like that. So Oculus is definitely up there for me.
Okay.
Recently, I actually watched a film called Incantation, which is actually a Taiwanese horror film.
I think
And
was it on Netflix, maybe? I feel
I
like
think
I think
so.
I saw that
Yeah,
one. It's I have my watch list is deep and I did remember seeing that one. I
yeah,
love Asian horror, like Japanese,
yeah.
Taiwan. They
They do
yeah.
a really, really good job. That one was cool because it like mixes some folklore a little bit into it,
Okay.
and it's a found footage film.
Okay.
Um, I think they do it really well. I think
Awesome.
it's pretty freaky.
Cool. I'm just taking a note here. I'm like actually writing it down. I was like, I have my notepad. I'm like, okay, I had seen it, and it's one of those things where like I come across movies, and I'm sure just like you guys both, I have every. It's like I have every streaming service at the tip of my fingertips, and you've got Shudder
Mhm.
and Netflix and Prime and Peacock, and so like I see these movies, and I'm like, not in the mood now, but then I forget to like put them in my backlog, right, to watch later,
Yeah.
and that was one of them. So yeah, I was like, let me write this down before I forget. Awesome. Well, good. I'm glad to see you guys both have the horror, love of horror and thriller, and sounds like psychological, which obviously leads us into talking about Sugarcane. So I kind of want to shift into that a little bit now that we've gotten to know each other a bit, and I want to know if each of you could kind of tell me a little bit about your journey in film. What got you into film? When, how old were you? Were you shooting movies in the backyard with the camcorder? And kind of talk to me about that journey and how that kind of led you to where you met, Pat, I understand it, right? Baker and the
Yeah.
postmortem folks and kind of getting into this idea for, hey, let's make this, thriller horror movie.
Um. Well, I'm an actor as well, and so I was always just trying to get roles, just trying to get parts, and you know, um, so that my love of movies and films just been around since birth. I just
Hmm.
love the spectacle, but I love the performances as well. And there was an audition, and I it was for a short film called The Question. Pat was directing it. I auditioned. I did great, but I didn't get offered the part. Instead, he asked if I could be part of the crew because we're just cool. He just liked working, talking to me, and then I joined the crew and, went from just working together to being friends and just project after project. And then both of us had taken a hiatus. And then one day he was like, "Hey man, I think about getting back into it. Full rebrand, starting over." And I thought I got a name and he pitched the name Postmortem.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, sounds cool. And
Yeah.
so went from there and we just been just pumping out, horror and thriller ever since. And, from there, I went from just being part of the crew to being part of creative writing process, to story development, to, first AD, and now I'm directing. So it's that's that's like the best summary I could give you of my
Okay.
weird but long journey of how I got here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like how, like you said, it almost went from something of might be disappointing, like, oh, I didn't get a role, but actually turned into something, quite fruitful and worked out, obviously, to where you are now. So that's a really awesome story. What about you,
Yeah.
Teague?
Yeah, I actually joined Postmortem in 2021.
Okay.
They had just started working on one of their short films, Host.
Hmm.
And I came along, Pat asked me to help with some props. They ended up inviting me to set. So I was working in like production assistance and I mean, being on set was so much fun. And I had never really been into filmmaking before.
Hmm.
I loved writing and being creative. So I think that was like my stepping stone into it. But once I experienced it, I was like, this is my life now. This is this is who I am. Um, and yeah, I think I just kept showing up and eventually they were like, all right, you're cool, I guess. You can join. Like you're
Hey,
part of
persistence pays off.
yeah. They're like,
So you
oh,
didn't did
we'll
so
let you
did
stick around.
so did you have the background in it before, or did you just kind of were like, hey, like, I just kind of fell in the right spot at the right time kind of thing?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I knew Pat from a job we had worked together, and
Okay.
so we kind of bonded really quickly over like creative stuff. And so I think that's where, we actually started collaborating more on that short film at the time because, I was so creative and doing a lot of art. And yeah, so that was kind of my gateway into it.
Awesome. Awesome. So whenever you're working on a group like this, like a collaborative effort, because obviously there's a lot of moving pieces when you're making a movie, for everything from where you guys are on the crew to all the actors, the writers, like you said, special effects, everything. There's a lot of pieces. How do you like work together with all those pieces to make sure that the vision is in the final product? Because I'm sure Pat has an idea of like, hey, or the writers, and you're part of the team DJ that does the creative writing portion, and you too, Teague, where you come up and you say, this is how where we want the movie to go, right? And then you're shooting it, and there's a lot of different opinions and views on how things should be done and how things should look. How do you keep that consistency so that, I mean, I feel like I was always the kid where I was like, I hated group projects because I'm like, I know what I want to do, but a movie is like the ultimate team project because you're bound to disagree at some point. So tell me a little bit about that collaborative effort and like making sure that we're all marching towards the same direction, but also like are accepting of other views and ideas that maybe they thought of something you did and that will work, right?
I think the for us the benefit that came from, you know, this film in particular was our experience of working with certain people over and over again over the years. And so by the time we were ready to do Sugarcane, I would say like about 80% of our crew and cast are people that we worked with before, or people we've had good rapport with over the years.
Hmm.
And so when it's time for, creative decisions or logistical work, there was already a mutual respect of everyone's job and everyone's lane. So it wasn't that hard for us, actually. People
Okay.
only really wanted to chime in or jump in to to collaborate, to help. There was significant trust in Pat's vision or my vision, and there was also trust in the leadership in the organization. So,
Mm.
when people were from producers to crew to talent, it was always okay, we trust what these people are doing because we've either worked with them before, we've seen what other people said about them. And whenever there was ever a position to where we had an issue with something we needed to get done, it was always from a collaborative standpoint. Which I think we were really, really fortunate to
Yeah.
have. And it's really hard to do that, especially when money gets involved. When you have, you know, producers that can
Investors.
write checks,
Hmm.
it becomes that thing where we have to say, hey, we are so appreciative of what you're giving us. All that we ask you to do is just let us cook.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
let us cook. And if we're stuck on something that you know that you can help us with, please, we greatly appreciate it. But like if you just let us cook, we promise you what you're gonna see, and the end result is gonna win you over. And that trust was earned, and it came through in the end. And I just say we were really fortunate to get that type of treatment with this film.
Excellent. Yeah, that is very fortunate, and I've actually had the opportunity to speak with another, I would say like pod of creative people in the UK that made a movie called The Cellar, and we
Mhm.
had the young actress, her name is Megan Adara, on the podcast, and Jamie Langlands, who's the director. And it was funny because I hear the same things. They're like they find people they work with and they bring them along to different projects. And so by the time they get to their third and fourth project, they have like this group of people. They're like, we just hit the ground running. We know where everyone's supposed to be. We know what everyone's job is, and we're like you said, we're just cooking at this point. Like we know and we trust the vision, and it's just become so much easier. And that's like a breath of fresh air because I feel like maybe in Hollywood, and maybe it's different. I've never been on a giant movie set, but I imagine it gets different when you start working with egos like Leo DiCaprio or these big names. You're starting to deal with different things, right? That maybe is bit of more of a challenge. But it sounds like you guys got a well-oiled machine going on.
Oh yeah, during the pre-production where we're trying to gather our Avengers
Yeah.
for the project, like we're like it's me, Pat, and Gabe Howard, who was the co-writer for
Hmm.
Sugarcane. We're sitting there, we're just like, okay, who can we bring back? And Pat's like, Teague is coming back. We're like, yes. It's literally that Avengers promo with like the row of chairs, and then you
Yeah.
see Teague Johnson's name, and like we're just cheering, like yes. It's like we got Teague. Okay, we're good. Okay, who else do we got? We're bringing
That's funny.
such a sigh of relief that we have great people to work with here, man. It's a blessing. It is.
Yeah. And we're all friends too. Like it's really it doesn't even feel like working half the
Hmm.
time. And because we all just trust each other, we all can also kind of like read each other pretty well. So I feel like
Sure.
we all can collaborate very freely
Yeah.
together. We have the freedom to be able to like say whatever comes to mind, and we can be honest with each other and consider everyone's ideas.
Yeah, that is a blessing and a plus. So, for the listeners and watchers that might be wondering, I was going to give a quick synopsis, just kind of the film in general, without being, no spoilers. I did have the opportunity to watch the film. It was funny. I was actually emailing back and forth with Gabe, and I was like, can I get a copy of the movie to watch again, just to refresh my memory, because it's been a couple of months. And he's like, unfortunately, we could like we had the deal with, we don't own we can't share the screeners anymore. And I was like, all right. So like goes back. I'm watching my review of it and I'm watching the trailer of it again. And I'm like, all right, I'm good now. But the idea is essentially a young woman is kidnapped.
Mhm.
And there's a website that is basically where people kind of reminds me of what's the movie? It's like basically people can log in. It's completely hidden, like on the black web, and they pay to watch people torture people essentially. And a woman and she enlists a friend who didn't think she was around anymore to help her track down and save this girl. She was a previous victim who escaped, and she's trying to track down this person who's got this young woman held captive. Did I pretty much get the overall gist of it?
Yeah, it's pretty
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Okay. And then I gotta say the character of Arthur was one of my favorite that I had seen in a movie. His I think it was there was another TikTok creator that posted a video on Sugarcane, and I was like, he nailed it. He said it was a little bit of Stewart, Stewart from
Yeah.
like Mama's Boy Stewart, and but
Yeah.
mixed with like Dexter. Is very like it was a very awkward person, but the minute he had this switch in him that was just evil. And so for I can't wait for people to kind of see and meet Arthur, that character with all of us, when it comes out in June, I believe is the release date. So that's pretty much the overall arc of the film. And like I said, I I really enjoyed this movie. I had a lot of fun with it, and it was funny. I don't remember if I think it was Pat that actually messaged me and was like, "Hey, we're having this movie. We want you to check it out and give us some feedback." And it's always a crapshoot when that happens because you're like, I don't know, what we're getting, what we're walking into, and I was like, I watched the trailer and I remember thinking like, this looks better than most like Hollywood movies that I see come out. Like it was just beautiful. It was well done. Like I said, the acting was amazing. I thought that it had great tension, and so I really enjoyed it. So kudos to you guys. I can't wait for everyone to see it with us.
Thank you so
Yep.
much.
Yeah,
That means
thank
a
you.
lot.
Yeah. So what can you tell me what's the biggest constraint that you have when working on a movie like this? You mentioned DJ earlier, like when money starts to get involved. Obviously, money, the root of all evil, starts can start to complicate things. But what's the biggest constraint or challenge you had working on the Sugarcane film? You know, if it's a financial one, if it is money, how do you work around that and kind of maximize what you have available to you?
Um, the biggest one was definitely money. It's
Mhm.
more so of, trying to reach out to all resources and, pull as many favors as humanly possible that, it's, the relationships you developed over the years and just because people care and respect you and what you're doing, they're willing to pull through for you. Um, that was it's funny because looking at it now, there were a lot of moments, and I'm pretty sure so many indie filmmakers can say the same thing. There were a lot of moments where it was down to the wire
Mhm.
financially, and just by the skin of your teeth or the grace, somebody or something pulls through for you in the end. Um, but outside of that, I think our biggest challenge was the third act, where in the woods.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say not gonna get into detail. It's just
Yep.
that there were several moments where we had to change scenery. There were several moments where we had to change certain circumstances that happened. Like if we gave you a copy of from the original script of that scene, you would look at it and go, "What the hell? This did not look like the way it looked like on page." And
Yeah.
it came to our benefit. A lot of what we had to do was regrouping and rethinking of how we can shoot this thing and how we can pull it off.
Mhm.
There was a lot of manpower. I'm not gonna say what it is, but there's this one particular spot in that third act in the woods where it was Pat and I had to put in that labor ourselves, and it took us almost 6 hours to get done.
I think I
But it
know
was
what scene you're
just
talking about.
yeah. It was just me and him, and we went but we for the love of the game we had to do it, but we were like, no, it's either this or nothing else. There was that entire experience during that time was a lot of, okay, this is what we have. How can we make it work? We didn't give up. We weren't too hard headed on trying to get exactly the way we wanted it. We're like, no, let's see what we can make out of this.
Hmm.
Instead of being too stubborn or getting our egos in the way.
Hmm.
And it pulled off, and it made for a much greater third act, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems to be that you've got to be willing to kind of roll with the punches and be flexible. And, like I said, talking to other filmmakers, they're like, listen, sometimes you've got a location for a scene and you've got it for one day. So you got to get in, you
Yeah,
got to get your shots, and you got to get out. Or you got to call in your brother's uncle, twice removed cousin to see if you can use that barn or use their property to do this. Like you got to, like you said, calling in those favors, making, trying to
yep,
do everything you can. So like, hey, this is free. All right, I'll take it. You know what I mean? Like, so that it very much aligns, and it's like I said, that's to me what makes it amazing because you hear all these stories, and you're like, we shot that in 20 minutes. We had to get out of there because a storm was rolling in, and then you watch the final product, and you're like, it looks awesome. It looks great.
yeah, yeah.
Movie magic.
Exactly.
So T, did you work on the costuming for this? You said you helped with like props and everything at first. What did you work like specifically on Sugarcane? You were part of the directing or producing?
I was with producing,
Producing.
so
Okay.
on set, I just helped out all around, just production assistance. And uh, yeah, as we've been working on the film since then, I've just been doing assistant producing work.
Gotcha. And how long have you guys been like if you said like what was day one? Like day one where we're kicking off, like how long has this been in progress?
Uh,
A long
Roughly.
For me, okay, so if we're basing this off of when the movie drops, which is June 13th,
June 13th.
uh
That's right.
gonna drop that in there. Um this will be a full on 2 year journey
Okay.
because we've started production for Sugarcane late spring. I would probably say probably around this time
Okay.
was when Pat and Gabe actually started working on the script. And then prior to that was us putting the story together. But yeah, it's been over 2 years of this thing, and then like shooting days, that's a different story. That was like, everyone had indie film, everyone has day jobs, everyone has obligations that they
Yeah.
that they need to fulfill, and so you can't come to set if you don't have a job. So it's kind of like so it was a lot of 2 weekends in a row here, 3 weekends in a row there
Mm-hmm.
that spanned about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
That spanned about 6 months in regards to like just sporadically scheduling everyone's weekends so that we can get it done.
That's crazy. That's awesome. So I have to know, did you guys when you're did you guys have I don't know if either one of you had anything to do with the casting of the characters? Like the actual like for like the bunny man, we'll call him, right? How did you, I'm just
Yeah.
curious if you had a hand in that, how it was like how you looked at this actor and you're like, that's the guy. That's the one.
A little tidbit here, and T can definitely attest to this. So first off, I just want to preface, Pat and I are huge pro wrestling fans.
Okay.
So when it comes to that's why we do like character driven stories. We look at characters and we build a story around them.
Mhm.
But like, for in terms of casting, the way we go about through the process is, you know, most of the time, Pat in particular has people in mind. We keep like a Rolodex of people in mind for certain characters. And um so like when he saw Michael and he saw like the type of range, the undeniable range that Michael Mal had,
Yeah.
Pat was like, this is the guy that we need to
Hmm.
really bite on something truly challenging and something truly heavy and
Yeah.
take whatever it is that I had in my head, which what he told me I had in my head, and just take it to levels I didn't think of. And so it's a lot of him, it's a lot of collaboration of us looking through talent. He'll send it to me, he'll send it to Teague, and we'll look at people and go, I see what you're okay, maybe they could do this, and and we kind of try to see if we can play to their strengths in the characters that we write. And so that's kind of how the process usually goes,
Okay.
in regards to how we cast these characters.
Gotcha. And did Michael bring anything like I'm just curious, was the character written exactly as he played it, or did he shoot any was anything off the cuff or he was like, you know what, I think it's like I'm gonna do it this way, and then like you guys were like, wow, that worked even better than I thought it was gonna work because I feel like some of his mannerisms and some of the things that he did that made him very unsettling. I was curious if it was written that way or if he because I looked a little bit into Michael's, background as far as like his projects he's worked on and stuff he's worked in before. And I was just curious if he did some of that himself or if it was written that way.
It was actually it was a the way we approached it with him was we made the small important details there, but we wanted to make sure to keep it as broad and as open as humanly possible for
Hmm.
him to tackle it and see what he can do with it, and just
Sure.
let him cook and see what
Yeah.
he brings to us. And that was sort of what we really got out of it. And so the development of Arthur in regards to how we worked with Michael was very collaborative. It
Okay.
was it was very it was very it was a teamwork I had never seen before. It was nowhere near of this is what this character is. This is what we need you to do. It was very much this is the goal that we're trying to achieve. How
Hmm.
can you get us there? And
Right.
that was how the collaboration went in regards to Michael's character. So, as far as lines on the script, most of it was he stayed true to most of it, but if he was inspired by something,
Right.
anything,
Right.
and whatever it was, that whether it was on set or during, like, when we were preparing for it, you know, he just did it.
Yeah.
And we had to, we either it either worked or it didn't. And most of the time it did. And
Yeah.
most of the time it did. And that was an interesting take on how we handled that character.
Right. Well, it seems like you have so many creative people that you're working with. Like a lot of times you don't want to put them in a box. You want to, like you said, you want to let them do what they're supposed to do. They're actors. I always like I like you can't see it because I'm all covered up, but I have a number of tattoos, and my tattoo artist is always like, "Well, give me inspiration. What do you want?" And I'm like, I want you to have your creative freedom. I want you to let those juices flow because that's when you're gonna feel like you're gonna get the best out of that person when you let them be their true self. And if they have an idea and they throw it off you and you don't like it, we can have a conversation, we can bounce ideas. But I think ultimately, yeah, when you're dealing with really talented people, which clearly you are, like I like how it's like it really seems like it was a collaborative effort, which is fun because I feel like projects can get into trouble sometime whenever if you do try to like put blinders on and be like we have to stay in this lane only, like when you try to like put those constraints on it, you're gonna have some struggles, I feel like, or you're gonna bump heads.
Right, exactly.
So the next one I wanted to know, did you guys have any um inspiration that you drew from for Sugarcane from other films? Like specifically, I mean, it's hard when make a film like this that's like a thriller, true crime, horror. It's hard to like not look at what's been done before you, right? Like the legends out there, like your Silence of the Lambs, like to your the Halloween 78, certain things that you may have seen growing up that are ingrained. And so when you're making a film, you're like, hey, I really like that scene where Michael Myers is behind the shrub. And so there's like maybe an homage to it in your film, or you draw inspiration when you're writing Sugarcane. So did you draw from anything? I mean, either of you, or when you're working with Pat that you was like, hey, I liked in this movie when this was done this, or something in the vein of something we've seen before. I was just curious.
Um, so the original idea of sugarcane was just something I had came up with because of my some commentary over um internet culture and vanity and what
Yeah.
we do for money and all that stuff. And you know the um the the way that we thought about and what we drew from in regards to characters like the Bunny Man was very much the iconic slashers of back in the day, of
Hmm.
how that's not much of a thing anymore. Nobody really creates iconic antagonists anymore in
Thank
regard
you.
in most horror films. So um that was definitely what we drew from, which was, what ways can we make a character like this step in the ring to in hopes to compete with those icons.
Hmm.
Um that for me, that was pretty much it
Okay.
on my end as far as inspiration on my end. I'm sure Pat could go much deeper in the way in the stuff that he was looking into, but for me it was very much on some commentary on internet culture, but then the slasher icons.
I didn't even think about the vanity and what we will do for money aspect of it until you mentioned that, and I was just like, I just had a holy shit epiphany. I'm like, that is exactly what you were going for this film, and it makes so much sense. But your point about the iconic characters, and I feel I've been in like my partner David couldn't be here today, but me and him have gotten in many arguments, and I'm like, name a horror movie antagonist or villain that is like that's a classic character. Like we don't, but there's no new ones. You could argue maybe that Art the Clown from the Terrifier series is like becoming that iconic like modern day face of horror, but all the ones that people talk about are old movies, right? Jason, Freddy, Michael, Chucky. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on from movies from the 70s and 80s. And then you get into the 90s with Scream. Ghostface absolutely is up there, but it's like an iconic character is so hard to come up with and get something. So I think you guys have that, and I'm excited. Like I said, I'm excited for people to see that character because I think you've got something that I haven't seen done before. Because you can put someone in a mask, but the mask has to be, to me, it has to tell a story, but it also has to be like menacing, you know what I mean? And I love the idea of the character being menacing, but also having this other backstory, which I'm not gonna ruin, but his story, his backstory when you meet the character is it's an interesting dynamic that he's got going on there. Um so Teague, I have a question for you. So whenever you're working through and helping with the producing and everything else, how do you help like manage the expectations of, like, you have backers, people like when you start dealing with money, when you're dealing with backers, and but still being true to the creative vision of itself. So how do you like kind of manage everyone's expectations? I know we've talked this is a collaborative effort, but there's got to be at some point where someone's like maybe getting a little bit frazzled about things that are going on, and maybe keeping them kind of like keeping everyone level-headed. Like, hey, we we have a vision here. We all trust each other. I mean, is it like, hey, let's go out for drinks and let's blow off steam? A pep talk? Like, what's your process?
I think definitely whenever you have times like that, I think it's important like to kind of center yourself and realize everyone here has the same goal. You know, we
Mhm.
all want this film to resonate with people in the same way. We all want the same outcome. We all want this to be successful. And so I think that's where it does come in with like a lot of trust in each
Mhm.
other and, the willingness to compromise on certain things and to stay true to the vision, and not just get stuck in your own ego. I think that's definitely a big part of it. For us in our team, I think we just communicate a lot. Like you kind of mentioned, I think we talk things out a lot. It's a lot of long phone calls. And by the end of it, we usually figure out a solution. I
Mhm.
think, I don't think we've ever had any great big disagreements about certain things.
Sure.
They might have another perspective, but I think it just takes a lot of talking it out and just realizing like, hey, we all want the same thing.
Right.
So let's figure out how to make that happen in the right way.
Yep. Well, I
Something I've
commend.
heard Teague say
Yeah.
a lot. You know, whenever Teague witnesses frustrations and stuff like Teague, I've heard Teague say before, like, dude, it's just a fucking movie. at the at the end of the day, and then I'm sitting, and I'm like, yeah, you're right, you're right.
Well, I mean, you think about it, like, I mean, it's a labor of love, like you mentioned, but like, it's really sounds like you guys love what you do, and when you love, what's the age old saying? You never work a day in your life, right? If you love what you're doing, you never work a day in your life. It is hard and it is challenging, but it's also rewarding. And I mean, as someone who's just on the outside, I'm not a filmmaker. I love horror. I have since I was a itty bitty kid, and my mom thought something was wrong with me. And I'm telling you, like the horror community and like seeing how accepting, and like, to me, you guys get to do, you have the coolest fucking job in the world. Like what you guys get to do and like make movies for people is fucking awesome. So I mean, I have the utmost respect, and and honestly, like, I'm jealous because I'm like, man, I feel like sometimes it's like I don't have a talented bone in my body. Like I couldn't come up with like this, write a movie and then put it into action. Like, like I have no idea what that process would even look like. Maybe someday it is a goal of mine to, like, I've met plenty of people now through independent film to just go on set someday and like check things out and like see what it looks like. See what, you know what I mean? Like just see all the moving pieces, and maybe one day I'd love to write a movie of my own, even if it's just a short, a 10-minute YouTube short, that I film myself. But it's that's definitely on my list. So, but it sounds like you guys have
Do
got a
it,
great
man.
group.
Definitely do it, man. Just to get it out of your system that you've done it.
Yeah.
It's a reward in itself. So yeah, I definitely encourage you to give it a shot, man.
I'm not sure that the world's ready to see what comes out of my head. Like sometimes I'm like sitting there thinking, like, I've seen so many. Like I said, I love shorts and I love independent film and I love everything from, like, I'm not a big gore guy. Like I've seen the Terrifier films, but that's not really my like. favorite genre. I'm partial to like the 80s, 90s slashers. Even though people are like, it's such a boring, predictable formula. And I'm like, yeah, but it works. It's worked every single time. You get a bunch of like good-looking guys and girls, you put them out in the woods or wherever, and you have a masked assailant with a weapon. Like it works. You don't need to mess with the formula. And so I was like, I see all this stuff and I'm like, what about this? Like, I've never seen this done. And so I'm like, well, maybe I could like do a 10-minute short, enlist, like you said, enlist all my friends that have camera equipment and lighting and and sound equipment and just make something and put it online. And I'll probably go back 10 years after I do it and be like, this is the biggest pile of dog shit I've ever seen. But there's only
But you're still
one
gonna
way
be
to,
proud of it.
and there's only one way to go is up. Even if you don't become a famous filmmaker, I guess it's worth, like you said, to use your creative mind and put something out there that you believe in. So,
And I know you said the world might not be ready. The world is never gonna be ready.
hmm
They're never gonna be ready. It's about but you know you're ready, and you are. I don't just by hearing you talk, you are. You
appreciate that.
know, Teague is a writer,
Yeah.
and Teague is. I'm not gonna spill any information. I'm just gonna say that Teague is heavily involved creatively on what we have coming up for the future. I'm not gonna go any more into detail in that, but
All right.
um, you will be surprised of a lot of Teague has a is putting a lot of fingers into
Okay.
a lot of her fingers into what we got in coming up next in the future. But that's all I'm gonna say on that. And
That's awesome.
Teague is ready. And that's you just never know.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see. So I got to ask, what if you had a piece of advice for whether it's someone like me who's 40 and says, "Hey, I want to get into filmmaking," or if it's someone like my daughter who's 8 and she's like, "I want to make a movie." What's a piece of advice you can give for, young up and coming, whether it's acting, whether it's producing, whether it's directing, being involved, and it doesn't have to be horror, just being involved in film. What is a piece of advice you can give?
Um, Talent gets you attention. Skills get you recognition. Networking gets you jobs.
Yeah.
So that would be my and none of that's gonna matter until you just start doing it.
hmm
The hardest part is starting it. They say
Gotcha.
the hardest part is to keep it going. Now the hardest part is really starting because when you get
hmm
back into it, you can get back into it whenever.
hmm
It's kind of like it's like riding a bike, but you can do it. And you know just stripping away the ego and the anxiety that comes with it when you're starting out. Once you
hmm
strip away that, it's rolling into it and keeping the ball rolling is so easy. So my inspiration, the for I would say to inspire people is that you know getting just get started on it and learn and network and just enjoy the fun and make sure you maintain out of it. Make sure you maintain the joy that you get out of what you're doing, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be in your way that's going to strip that from you. Is fighting for that. You'll keep loving it and you'll keep doing it, and um, believing in yourself. Because and I know that sounds cheesy. I know that sounds, but it's so
It's
true.
true.
None of we would not have gotten this done if we didn't believe in ourselves. So,
Yeah.
that's honestly no one's gonna believe in you more than you do, and that, um, it'll take you far.
Awesome. What are the
That's from me.
what
T.
are Teague's words of wisdom?
Well, yeah, I kind of agree with DJ when he says to just start doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like the biggest hurdle for a lot of people in any, sector of life,
100%.
especially in this day and age. It's a lot easier to look at other people doing something that you really want to do. And it's a lot easier to think, man, I wish I could do that. Like, oh, I really want to do this. Oh, like, why did they get to do it?
Right.
All you have to do is, get out of your comfort zone a little bit and just start doing it. And, like DJ said, everyone starts somewhere. It's you're never going to be perfect at what you do when you first start doing it, but you just have to keep showing up for yourself and keep allowing yourself the grace to make mistakes and to grow and to change.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece of advice I could give is just like put everything down, put your phone down, go and do it. Just stop thinking about
Yeah.
it, just do it.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's a very human thing, like the fear of rejection. And I mean, even like like I said, I'm not an actor, I'm not a director, I don't make movies, but with the podcast, when I go to these like what horror conventions, film festivals, things like that, like I would, especially like when you go to like a convention and you see, um, maybe all these actors, these are famous people you're interacting with, right? And I was always like, oh, I forget who it was. There was an actor, not an a. I wouldn't say it's not John. I'm not talking John Carpenter or anything, but it was a lower level film that I'd seen someone in, and I wanted to have him on the podcast. And my buddy was like, just go talk to him. Just go talk to him. What's the absolute worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen is he's not nice about it. He tells you no, that his handler steps in, whatever, and that's it. You're not being rude. They're there to interact with fans, with people in the industry. And so that was the biggest thing is like once I got over, like I'll talk to fucking anyone now, literally anyone. It does not like I'm gonna see Bruce Campbell in May, and I was like, I'll ask him to come on the podcast. I don't give a shit. He'll probably say no, but you know what? I've gotten more yeses than I have no's.
Mm.
And just I see a trailer on TikTok on Instagram for a film. I'll message them right away. This looks amazing. Are you guys doing screeners? I'd love to take a review at it. I'd love to have some people come on the podcast. And like I've gotten more people that are receptive because I think the community is a very accepting place, especially horror and film. And so like I think that kind of resonates with what both of you just said. Like just making that first step and being like the worst thing that they can say is no.
Mhm.
That's it. You're gonna hear more yeses, and then, I mean, and once you get the yeses, like you said, that hunger will keep you kind of going. So I agree with both of you there. So as we're wrapping up here, I got to know. So tell me. So we talked about it earlier. June 16th or June 13th is when the film releases, and on video on demand. Is it going to be on specific platforms? Amazon, I'm assuming.
It's gonna be on Amazon and Fandango at home.
Okay. All right. So
A
we can.
bunch of other platforms like Tubi and
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's gonna be some spread out pretty far.
So was that well, I mean, I guess I have one more question then. Is that a challenge to like go through that process of getting like the film put onto all these different platforms?
Yeah, it was a whole different. I'll just say it like this: it was a whole different beast. You know, we thought there was so much that we time to go through the decision process, and we were like, oh, okay. And now, okay, we got to get this ready, this ready. It was a lot of manpower and a lot of long hours put into to getting this thing prepared for distribution. But it's
Hmm.
worth it, learning as you go in that aspect. It's worth it. Now we know what we're doing,
Yeah.
and it goes a long way.
That was like me doing my taxes for the first time this year for like I had an LLC for the first time and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, first of all, I made no money. It was literally me dumping money into it. And so like, why is the IRS concerned with me? But to your point, now I know how to do it. So next year I'll be golden. So and
Right.
are you guys gonna have physical media for sale? Are you doing Blu-rays? Are you guys gonna be selling anything? I would love to have a physical copy of the movie. I wasn't sure if that was even on your radar.
Yes, physical copies will be soon. We do not have a determined date on that yet,
Okay.
but it is planned,
All
and
right.
we'll definitely keep you posted for when that's available.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on social media. I'd love to get a physical copy of that. So you heard it here, June the 13th. It will be on video on demand, Amazon, Fandango at home, Tubi, and a plethora of other spots. Be on the lookout for Sugarcane. And I want to thank DJ and Teague for joining me today just to chat a little bit about film in general and the Sugarcane movie that's coming up. And so I appreciate you guys joining. It was a pleasure talking to you both.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Th-
having us. It was
Yep, and
awesome to meet you
I
and
look
talk with you.
Sure, and I look forward to the newest project with Teague's fingerprints all over that one.
Maybe.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I look forward to what's coming from Postmortem, and thanks again for joining. You guys have an awesome evening.
Thank you. You
Thank
too.
you. You
All
too,
right,
man.
take care.
Bye.
Bye.